Emily Carter had never believed that one single night could destroy an entire life. Only a few hours ago, she had been smiling while looking at a white wedding dress hanging in her bedroom. She had imagined walking down the aisle, starting a new life with the man she loved, and leaving behind years of struggle. She thought she had finally found happiness. But happiness disappeared the moment she accidentally heard a conversation that was never meant for her ears. Hidden behind a half-closed office door, she heard her fiancé laughing with 3 dangerous men dressed in black suits. "She has no idea," he said with a smile. "Once I sign the papers, she's yours. My debt will be cleared, and I never have to see her again." Emily froze. Every word felt like a knife. She wanted to believe she had misunderstood, but then one of the men placed a thick envelope full of cash on the table, and her fiancé grabbed it without hesitation. "A beautiful woman is worth more than money these days," another man laughed. Emily's heart shattered. The man she trusted had not only lied to her, he had sold her like she was nothing more than an object. Fear took control before she could think. She quietly stepped back, trying not to make a sound, but her shaking hands knocked over a flower vase. The loud crash echoed through the house. Every voice inside the office suddenly stopped. "Someone's there," one man shouted. Emily did not wait another second. She turned and ran toward the front door as fast as she could. Behind her, angry footsteps exploded through the hallway. "Catch her!" someone yelled. "She knows everything." Emily rushed into the dark street just as heavy rain began pouring from the sky. Cold water soaked her hair and clothes within seconds, but she never looked back. She only knew that if those men caught her, she would disappear forever. Cars raced through the streets, people hurried inside buildings to escape the storm, and no one noticed the terrified young woman running for her life. Minutes later, black SUVs appeared behind her. Their bright headlights cut through the rain like hunting eyes. Tires screamed against the wet road as the vehicles chased her. Emily turned into narrow streets, crossed empty parking lots, and jumped over broken fences, desperately searching for somewhere to hide. Her lungs burned, her legs felt weak, but fear kept pushing her forward. Suddenly, a loud gunshot echoed across the street. The bullet struck a brick wall only inches from her shoulder, sending pieces of stone flying into her face. She cried out but refused to stop running. "Don't shoot her," one man shouted. "The boss wants her alive." Those words scared her even more. They were not trying to kill her. They wanted to take her back alive, and somehow that felt much worse. Emily finally reached a dark alley between 2 old buildings. She pressed her back against the cold wall, covering her mouth to stop herself from breathing too loudly. Her heart pounded so hard she thought the men outside could hear it. Their footsteps grew closer. Flashlights moved across the walls. "Search every corner," one of them ordered. "She can't be far." Emily closed her eyes. She whispered a silent prayer, knowing she had nowhere left to run. Tears mixed with the rain on her face. She thought about her parents, who had died years ago, and realized there was no one left in the world who would even know she had disappeared. Just then, an old homeless woman slowly appeared from the shadows. Her clothes were worn, her gray hair was soaked by the rain, but her eyes were kind. Without saying a word, she pointed toward a rusty metal gate hidden behind several trash bins. "Go," she whispered. "Quickly." Emily looked at her with surprise. "Why are you helping me?" The old woman smiled sadly. "Because once, someone saved me." Emily nodded with grateful eyes, quietly opened the gate, and slipped through just seconds before the armed men entered the alley. "She's gone," one of them shouted angrily. Emily did not wait to hear the rest. She kept running through another empty street until suddenly her feet stopped on their own. A long black limousine stood perfectly still in the middle of the road. It looked expensive enough to belong to a king. The headlights reflected off the wet pavement, making the entire street glow beneath the falling rain. Everything around Emily became strangely quiet. Even the men chasing her slowed down. One of them looked at the limousine and his face instantly turned pale. "No," he whispered. Another shook his head in fear. "It can't be him." Emily frowned. She had no idea who they were talking about. The limousine door slowly opened. A tall man stepped out holding a black umbrella. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, black gloves, and polished shoes that never seemed to touch the dirty water beneath them. His dark hair was neatly combed, and his sharp face showed no emotion at all. His calm gray eyes scanned the street with complete confidence, as though nothing in the world could surprise him. He looked neither angry nor nervous. He simply looked powerful. The air itself seemed heavier after he arrived. One of the armed men nervously stepped forward. "This doesn't concern you," he said, trying to sound brave. "We're only collecting what belongs to us." The stranger looked at him for a few silent seconds before speaking in a deep, calm voice. "Who gave you permission to make noise on my street?" His words were soft, yet every person standing there felt their blood run cold. The gang leader forced himself to laugh. "Move aside. We don't want trouble." The stranger gave a faint smile. Trouble already arrived. Before anyone could react, he calmly pulled out a pistol fitted with a suppressor. A quiet shot echoed through the rain. The gang leader collapsed onto the road before he even realized he had been hit. Panic spread instantly. The remaining gunmen raised their weapons, but black SUVs suddenly surrounded the entire street from every direction. More than 20 armed guards stepped out together, all dressed in black suits, moving with perfect discipline. They surrounded the stranger without saying a word until one of them respectfully lowered his head. "Boss," he said. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Whoever this man was, every dangerous person in the city clearly feared him. Within less than a minute, the fight was over. Some attackers surrendered, others ran away, and the few who resisted never stood a chance. The rain washed away the blood as silence returned once again. The stranger slowly walked toward Emily. Every step was calm and controlled. She wanted to run, but her exhausted body refused to move. He stopped only a few feet away and looked directly into her frightened eyes. "What is your name?" he asked. "Emily," she answered quietly. "Who is chasing you?" She hesitated before telling him everything: her fiancé's betrayal, the debt, the sale, and the forced marriage waiting for her if she was captured. The stranger listened without interrupting. His expression never changed. When she finished speaking, he simply nodded once, as though he had already expected such cruelty from the world. One of his guards approached carefully. "Mr. DeLuca, the police will arrive soon." Emily looked at him in surprise. "DeLuca," she whispered. She had heard that surname only once before, in a newspaper headline that called one man the most feared Mafia boss in America, a man no one dared challenge. Her eyes widened as she finally understood who stood before her. Adrian DeLuca, the man whose name alone terrified criminals. Adrian turned toward his limousine. "Take care of yourself," he said calmly before beginning to walk away. Emily stared at his back, feeling the last piece of hope slipping away. If he left, the men hunting her would eventually find her again. She had nowhere else to go. Her hands trembled as one desperate idea entered her mind. It sounded impossible, even foolish, but it was her only chance to survive. "Wait," she called. Adrian stopped but did not turn around. Emily swallowed hard, gathered every bit of courage she had left, and walked toward him. Her voice shook so badly she could barely hear herself. Will you pretend to be my husband?" Every bodyguard froze in complete shock. No one had ever dared ask Adrian DeLuca for anything. Silence filled the rainy street. Then Adrian slowly turned to face her. A faint smile appeared on his lips for the very first time that night. He stepped closer until only a few inches separated them and quietly whispered, "Only if it's forever." Emily felt her heart stop. She had no idea whether she had just saved her life, or walked willingly into the arms of the most dangerous man she would ever meet. Emily stood frozen beneath the cold rain, unable to believe what she had just heard. Adrian DeLuca's quiet words echoed inside her mind again and again. "Only if it's forever." She had expected him to laugh at her desperate request or simply walk away, but instead he had accepted it in the most unexpected way. She searched his face for any sign that he was joking, yet there was none. His gray eyes remained calm, unreadable, and strangely serious. Around them, every bodyguard stood silently, exchanging shocked glances. None of them had ever seen their boss agree to something so personal, especially for a woman he had met only minutes earlier. Emily's heart raced as she realized there was no turning back now. Whether this was a mistake or a miracle, her life had changed forever. Adrian slowly held out his hand without saying another word. Emily hesitated for a moment before placing her trembling hand in his. His grip was warm and steady, making her realize how cold she had become from the rain. Without another question, Adrian guided her toward the black limousine. One of the guards quickly opened the rear door while another respectfully lowered his head. Emily climbed inside, still trying to understand what was happening. The soft leather seats, the gentle lights, and the quiet warmth inside the car felt like a completely different world from the terrifying streets outside. Adrian entered after her, closed the door, and with one simple nod, the convoy began moving through the city. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Emily stared through the rain-covered window as the city lights blurred into colorful lines. Her thoughts were filled with fear and confusion. Finally, she gathered enough courage to break the silence. "Why did you help me?" she asked quietly. Adrian continued looking forward before answering in his deep, calm voice. "Because I don't like men who treat innocent people as property." Emily looked at him in surprise. It was not the answer she expected. "And why did you agree to pretend to be my husband?" she asked again. This time Adrian looked directly at her. "Because the men chasing you belong to a family that has been trying to challenge me for years. By choosing you, they walked into my business." His answer sounded logical, but Emily felt there was something he was not telling her. After nearly 30 minutes, the convoy reached the top of a hill overlooking the city. Massive black gates slowly opened as the vehicles entered a huge private estate surrounded by high walls, cameras, and armed guards. Emily stared through the window in amazement. The mansion ahead looked more like a royal palace than a home. Beautiful fountains decorated the entrance, expensive cars filled the driveway, and security guards stood at every corner. She had never imagined a place like this existed. As the limousine stopped, several staff members lined up outside. Every person lowered their head the moment Adrian stepped out. Their respect for him was absolute. Inside the mansion, everything was elegant. Crystal chandeliers lit the marble floors, expensive paintings covered the walls, and the silence made the house feel even larger. Emily walked carefully behind Adrian, afraid to touch anything. Suddenly, a cheerful young woman wearing a black business suit hurried toward them with a tablet in her hand. "Good evening, boss," she said with a bright smile before noticing Emily. Her smile immediately disappeared. "Who is she?" Adrian answered without hesitation. "My future wife." The tablet slipped from the woman's hands and landed on the floor with a loud sound. Every nearby servant stopped working and looked toward them in complete disbelief. Within minutes, the news spread across the mansion. The most feared Mafia boss in the country had returned home with a woman and had announced she would become his wife. No one could believe it. Some servants whispered in surprise, while others wondered if they had heard correctly. Emily wished the floor would open beneath her feet. She felt embarrassed by all the attention, but Adrian acted as though nothing unusual had happened. He calmly walked upstairs while Emily followed behind, trying to ignore the curious eyes watching her from every direction. Adrian opened the door to a beautiful guest room. It was larger than Emily's entire apartment. A king-sized bed stood beside large windows overlooking the city, and fresh flowers filled the room with a soft fragrance. "You'll stay here," Adrian said. Emily slowly looked around before turning back to him. "Thank you for everything." Adrian nodded once. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow, we start convincing the world that our marriage is real." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She suddenly realized this fake marriage would not remain a secret between them. Everyone would have to believe it. After Adrian left, Emily sat quietly on the edge of the bed. Everything felt unreal. Just that morning she had been preparing to marry one man, and now she was living inside the mansion of another, a man feared by the entire criminal world. She touched the soft blanket beneath her fingers and wondered whether she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Sleep refused to come. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered her former fiancé accepting money in exchange for her freedom. Tears quietly rolled down her cheeks. Meanwhile, Adrian stood alone on the mansion's balcony, watching the rain continue to fall over the city. His oldest advisor, Marco, quietly approached him. "Boss," he said carefully, "with respect, this decision is dangerous. Every enemy will believe your new wife is your greatest weakness. Adrian remained silent for several moments before answering. That's exactly what I want them to believe. Marco looked confused. You have a plan? Adrian's eyes remained fixed on the dark skyline. Someone has been hiding inside my organization for years. If they believe Emily matters to me, they'll reveal themselves. Marco slowly nodded, finally understanding. But even he could not ignore one strange detail. Adrian had risked his own safety for a woman he barely knew. That had never happened before. The next morning, Emily woke to the sound of birds outside her window. For the first time in many hours, she almost forgot where she was. Then everything came rushing back. Before she could get dressed, there was a knock on the door. A maid entered carrying several elegant dresses. Mr. De Luca asked me to prepare you, she said politely. Emily looked at the expensive clothes in surprise. Prepare me? For what? The maid smiled nervously. The press conference. The entire country will meet Mrs. Emily De Luca today. Emily's face turned pale. She whispered to herself, "What have I gotten myself into?" Emily stood silently in front of the large bedroom mirror while two maids carefully adjusted the elegant ivory-colored dress Adrian had chosen for her. The soft fabric felt expensive, and the diamond earrings resting on the table probably cost more than everything she had ever owned. She hardly recognized the woman staring back at her. Only yesterday she had been running through dark streets, terrified and alone. Now she was preparing to stand beside the most feared Mafia boss in America as his future wife. It all felt like a dream, one that could become a nightmare at any moment. Her hands trembled as she took a deep breath, trying to calm herself, but nothing could stop the fear growing inside her. She wasn't afraid of cameras or reporters. She was afraid of making one small mistake that would expose their fake relationship and put both their lives in danger. A gentle knock came at the door before Adrian walked inside. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit with a dark tie, looking calm and confident as always. For a brief second, his eyes rested on Emily. He didn't speak immediately, but there was something different in his expression. It was the first time he had truly looked at her instead of simply observing her. Emily nervously looked away. "Is something wrong?" she asked quietly. Adrian shook his head. "No." After a short pause, he added, "You look beautiful." Emily blinked in surprise. She wasn't expecting a compliment from a man whose face almost never showed emotion. A faint blush appeared on her cheeks, and she softly whispered, "Thank you." Adrian looked away first, as though even he wasn't used to saying such words. A few minutes later, they walked downstairs together. The moment Adrian reached the entrance hall, dozens of guards straightened their posture. Luxury cars waited outside, surrounded by a security convoy. As Emily stepped beside Adrian, he unexpectedly held out his arm. She looked at him with uncertainty. "They're watching," he said quietly. "If we're going to fool the world, we must look real." Emily slowly slipped her hand through his arm. The simple touch sent an unexpected warmth through her body. Adrian remained calm, but one of his oldest guards noticed something unusual. Their boss had never willingly allowed anyone to stand this close to him before. Outside the mansion gates, hundreds of reporters were already waiting. Cameras flashed non-stop as soon as Adrian's car arrived. Security guards quickly formed a protective line while the couple stepped onto the red carpet leading toward the press stage. Microphones stretched toward them from every direction. Reporters shouted endless questions. "Mr. De Luca, is it true you're getting married? Who is the mysterious woman? When did your relationship begin?" Emily's heart pounded so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. She forced herself to keep smiling, remembering Adrian's warning to stay calm. One reporter suddenly asked the question she feared most. "Miss Emily, how did you and Mr. De Luca fall in love?" Emily froze. She had never prepared an answer for that. Before she could think, Adrian gently placed his hand around hers. His grip was steady and reassuring. He looked at the reporters and answered smoothly, "Some stories are too personal to share with the world." The crowd laughed softly, believing he was protecting a romantic memory. Emily looked at Adrian with surprise. Once again, he had saved her without making it obvious. For the first time since meeting him, she felt a small sense of safety. The press conference ended successfully, but someone hidden among the crowd watched every second with cold eyes. Inside a black SUV parked across the street, Victor Romano slowly lowered his binoculars. He was the son of the Mafia family that had purchased Emily from her former fiancé. Victor slammed his fist against the dashboard. "Impossible," he growled. "How did she end up with Adrian DeLuca?" One of his men nervously asked. "What do we do now, sir?" Victor's lips slowly curled into a dangerous smile. "If Adrian wants to protect her." He leaned back in his seat. "Then we'll use her to destroy him." That evening, Adrian and Emily returned to the mansion after a long day of meetings. Emily finally felt relaxed enough to breathe. She walked into the beautiful garden behind the mansion, where colorful flowers surrounded a quiet fountain. The peaceful place was nothing like the violent world outside the gates. Adrian found her standing there alone, watching the sunset. "You handled today well," he said. Emily smiled softly. "Only because you kept saving me." Adrian stood beside her, looking at the orange sky. "You'll have to save yourself eventually." Emily nodded. "I know." After a few moments of silence, she asked the question that had been on her mind since yesterday. "Have you ever loved anyone?" Adrian's face became unreadable again. His eyes remained fixed on the fading sunlight. "Once," he answered quietly. "A long time ago." Emily noticed the sadness hidden behind his calm voice, but decided not to ask anything more. Inside the mansion, however, not everyone welcomed Emily. Isabella, Adrian's elegant cousin, watched the two of them through the window with growing jealousy. She had always believed Adrian would eventually choose someone from another powerful Mafia family, strengthening their empire. Instead, he had brought home an ordinary woman from nowhere. Isabella couldn't understand it, and she refused to accept it. Quietly pulling out her phone, she dialed a secret number. When the call connected, she whispered, "She's here, and Adrian is already starting to trust her." The voice on the other end laughed softly before replying, "Good. Keep watching. The right moment is coming." Later that night, Emily couldn't sleep again. She walked into the mansion's library, hoping to find a book that would calm her mind. As she searched the shelves, she accidentally noticed an old framed photograph lying face down on a nearby table. Curious, she picked it up. The picture showed a much younger Adrian smiling beside a beautiful woman with long dark hair. It was the first real smile Emily had ever seen on his face. Before she could look closer, Adrian quietly entered the room. His eyes immediately fell on the photograph. Without saying a word, he gently took it from her hands and placed it back inside a drawer. "I'm sorry," Emily said softly. "I didn't mean to invade your privacy." Adrian remained silent for several seconds before answering. "Her name was Sophia." Emily waited, sensing there was more. "I was supposed to marry her." "What happened?" Adrian slowly closed the drawer. "She was murdered, because someone wanted to hurt me." The room became painfully quiet. Emily looked at him with sympathy. She finally understood why Adrian kept his emotions locked away. Loving someone had once cost him everything. At that exact moment, outside the mansion walls, another black SUV stopped beneath the trees. A masked man climbed over the outer fence without making a sound. Hidden in the darkness, he raised a high-powered camera and pointed it toward Emily's bedroom window. After taking several photographs, he smiled coldly. He picked up his phone and made a call. "We've confirmed it," he whispered. "Emily is Adrian DeLuca's weakness." A slow laugh came from the other end. "Perfect. Tomorrow, we begin." The next morning, the mansion looked peaceful, but Adrian knew better. In his world, silence usually came before violence. As the first rays of sunlight entered through the tall windows, he stood in his office reading a security report. Every page confirmed the same thing: someone had been watching the mansion all night. Hidden cameras had captured a shadow near the outer wall, but the intruder had escaped before the guards reached him. Adrian slowly placed the report on his desk. His face remained calm, but his sharp eyes revealed that he was already planning his next move. Marco stood nearby, waiting for orders. "Double the security," Adrian said. "No one enters or leaves without my permission." Marco nodded. "Do you think they're coming for Emily?" Adrian looked out the window toward the garden where Emily was walking alone. "They're not thinking about coming," he replied quietly. "They're already here." Emily had no idea that someone had been spying on her. She wandered through the mansion's beautiful garden, enjoying the fresh morning air for the first time in days. For a few peaceful minutes, she almost forgot the danger surrounding her. She stopped near a small pond where white swans floated across the water. A gentle smile appeared on her face. She had spent so many years struggling to survive that she had forgotten what peace felt like. Just then, Adrian quietly joined her. He stood beside her without saying anything. Emily looked at him and smiled. "This place is beautiful." Adrian nodded. "It wasn't always." She looked at him with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Adrian's eyes rested on the old stone fountain nearby. Years ago, this garden was destroyed during an attack. Emily looked surprised. "Did you rebuild it?" Adrian gave a small nod. "Some things deserve a second chance." Emily noticed that he wasn't only talking about the garden. Before she could reply, a loud engine echoed through the estate. A black SUV stopped near the front entrance, and several guards immediately surrounded it. Marco quickly walked toward Adrian. "Boss," he said in a serious voice, "the Romano family has sent someone." Adrian's expression instantly turned cold. Emily watched as a tall man stepped out of the SUV carrying a small gift box wrapped in black paper. He smiled politely, but there was no kindness in his eyes. "Good morning," the stranger said. "Mr. Romano sends his congratulations on your engagement." Adrian didn't move. "Leave the gift and go." The man smiled wider. "Of course." He placed the box on the ground, returned to his vehicle, and drove away without another word. Marco immediately ordered the bomb squad to inspect the package. Emily looked confused. "You think it's dangerous?" she asked. Marco answered before Adrian could speak. "In this world, every gift is dangerous." After several tense minutes, one guard carefully opened the box. There was no bomb inside. Instead, a single white wedding veil lay folded beside a handwritten note. Adrian unfolded the paper and silently read the message. His jaw tightened. Emily noticed the change in his face. "What does it say?" she asked. Adrian slowly handed her the note. "A bride always belongs to the man who paid for her. We'll come to collect what's ours." Emily's hands began shaking so badly that the paper nearly slipped from her fingers. Her worst nightmare had followed her even into Adrian's fortress. Adrian gently took the note back before looking toward Marco. "Find Victor Romano." His voice remained calm, but everyone standing nearby understood the danger hidden behind those words. Before sunset. The rest of the day passed under heavy security. Every entrance was guarded, every hallway watched, and every visitor questioned. Emily could feel the tension growing inside the mansion. Even the servants whispered less than usual. That evening, she found Adrian alone in the library, quietly reading an old leather-bound book. She hesitated before sitting across from him. "Am I causing all of this?" she asked softly. Adrian closed the book and looked at her. "No." Emily lowered her eyes. "If I hadn't asked you for help, none of this would be happening." Adrian remained silent for a moment before answering. "You didn't create this war." He paused. "You only became part of it." Emily sighed. "Sometimes I feel guilty." "You shouldn't. I brought danger into your life." Adrian gave a faint smile. "Danger has lived with me for years." For the first time since they met, Emily laughed quietly. It wasn't a loud laugh, but it was real. Adrian noticed it immediately. Without realizing it himself, he smiled too. From the doorway, Isabella secretly watched them together. Jealousy burned inside her heart. She had never seen Adrian smile like that after Sophia's death. Emily was changing him, and Isabella hated it. That night, Isabella quietly left the mansion using a private exit that very few people knew about. Hidden beneath the darkness, she entered an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city. Victor Romano was already waiting for her. He leaned against a table with a confident smile. "Did anyone see you?" he asked. Isabella shook her head. "No." Victor poured himself a drink before asking the question he truly cared about. Has Adrian fallen for her? Isabella hesitated. She remembered the small smile Adrian had given Emily in the library. She remembered the way he looked at her during breakfast. Finally, she nodded. He's trying not to, but yes. Victor's smile grew even wider. Perfect. He walked toward a large wall covered with photographs. Every picture showed Emily, walking through the garden, standing beside Adrian, entering the mansion, smiling during the press conference. Victor picked up a red marker and circled Emily's face. She isn't our target anymore, he said quietly. She's our weapon. Isabella looked uncomfortable. What are you planning? Victor's eyes darkened. I'm going to make Adrian choose. Choose what? Victor smiled coldly. His empire. Or the woman he's beginning to love. The following afternoon, Emily asked one of the maids if she could visit the small chapel located on the far side of the estate. She wanted a quiet place to think and pray. Adrian agreed but ordered 6 guards to stay with her. As Emily entered the peaceful stone chapel, she finally felt safe enough to breathe. She knelt before the altar and quietly closed her eyes. Outside, hidden among the tall trees beyond the estate wall, a sniper slowly adjusted the scope of his rifle. His finger rested lightly on the trigger. A voice whispered through his earpiece. Wait. Not yet. We want Adrian to watch. The sniper smiled. Inside the chapel, Emily opened her eyes, completely unaware that someone was already aiming directly at her. Emily remained kneeling inside the quiet chapel, her hands folded as she whispered a silent prayer. For the first time in many days, she tried to forget the fear, the lies, and the dangerous world she had been pulled into. Sunlight streamed through the colorful stained glass windows, covering the stone floor with soft shades of red, blue, and gold. The peaceful silence made it hard to believe that death was only a few hundred feet away. Hidden among the tall trees outside the estate, the sniper adjusted his rifle one final time. His breathing slowed, and his finger rested gently on the trigger. Through the scope, Emily's face appeared perfectly clear. Target locked, he whispered into his earpiece. On the other end of the line, Victor Romano stood inside an abandoned warehouse, smiling as he watched the live camera feed. Wait for my signal, he ordered. I don't just want her dead. I want Adrian to watch her die. At that same moment, Adrian was in his office reviewing financial reports when his phone vibrated. One of his security experts looked up from the surveillance monitors with a frightened expression. Boss, he said. Camera 12 just went offline. Adrian immediately stood. Which area? The East Garden, near the chapel. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Every camera in his estate had backup power. They could not simply stop working, unless someone had disabled them on purpose. Without wasting another second, Adrian grabbed his jacket and rushed out of the office. Seal every gate, he shouted. No one enters or leaves the estate. His guards immediately sprang into action. Alarms echoed across the mansion as dozens of armed men moved into position. Emily heard the distant sirens from inside the chapel and slowly stood, confused. Before she could walk outside, a loud gunshot shattered the peaceful silence. The chapel window exploded into hundreds of pieces. Glass flew across the room as the sniper's bullet struck the wall only inches from Emily's head. She screamed and instinctively dropped to the floor. Another shot followed immediately, smashing a wooden bench behind her. Dust filled the air. Emily's heart pounded wildly as she crawled behind the stone altar, trying to protect herself. Outside, Adrian heard the gunfire. His face became completely expressionless. But every guard who knew him understood exactly what that meant. The calmer Adrian looked, the more dangerous he became. Find the shooter, he ordered. Within seconds, armed guards spread across the estate while others surrounded the chapel. The sniper fired one more shot before disappearing into the forest beyond the walls. Adrian reached the chapel just as another bullet shattered the entrance door. Ignoring the danger, he ran inside. Emily! She looked up from behind the altar. I'm here. The relief in Adrian's eyes lasted only a second before another bullet struck the stone pillar beside him. Without thinking, he threw himself toward Emily, wrapping one arm around her as both of them fell behind the thick marble altar. Pieces of stone rained down around them. Emily looked at him in complete shock. "You came back." Adrian looked directly into her frightened eyes. "I said I'd protect you." For a brief moment, neither of them noticed the gunfire outside. Emily realized Adrian's arm was still around her shoulders, shielding her from every direction. His heartbeat was steady despite the chaos. Somehow, that calmness made her feel safe. Outside, Marco finally spotted movement near the forest. "There!" he shouted. The sniper jumped onto a waiting motorcycle hidden beyond the trees. Several guards chased him, but smoke grenades suddenly exploded across the road, blocking their view. By the time the smoke disappeared, the sniper had vanished. Inside the chapel, Adrian carefully helped Emily stand. "Are you hurt?" She slowly shook her head. "No." Only then did Adrian notice a thin line of blood running down her forehead. A small piece of broken glass had cut her skin. His expression changed instantly. The sight of her blood awakened something inside him that even he did not expect. Anger. Pure, uncontrollable anger. He gently touched the small wound with his handkerchief. "This ends today," he whispered. Emily looked at him. "What do you mean?" Adrian's gray eyes became colder than ice. "It means Victor Romano has declared war." Back at the mansion, the estate doctor cleaned Emily's cut while Adrian stood silently near the window. Nobody dared speak. Even the servants sensed the dangerous atmosphere filling the house. Marco entered the room carrying a small evidence bag. "We found this near the forest." Inside the bag was a silver bullet engraved with the letter R. Romano. Adrian didn't even need an explanation. Victor wanted him to know exactly who was responsible. Marco carefully asked, "Boss, what are your orders?" Adrian slowly buttoned his suit jacket. "Prepare every team." Marco hesitated. "Every team." Adrian nodded. "The war begins tonight." Within an hour, more than 50 black SUVs gathered inside the estate. Armed soldiers checked their weapons while helicopters prepared for takeoff above the mansion. Emily watched everything from the balcony, unable to believe what she was seeing. She had never imagined one man could command such power. She hurried downstairs and found Adrian walking toward the front entrance. "Please don't go," she said softly. Adrian stopped. "If you leave now, more people will die." He looked at her for several seconds before answering. "If I don't leave, they'll never stop hunting you." Emily stepped closer. "I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me." Adrian gently lifted her chin so she would look into his eyes. "This was never your fault." His voice remained calm. "But it becomes my failure if I let them touch you again." For the first time, Emily saw genuine emotion behind his cold eyes. She realized something that frightened her even more than the gunfire. Adrian wasn't protecting her because of their agreement anymore. He was protecting her because he truly cared. Adrian turned and walked toward the waiting convoy. The engines roared to life. More than 50 vehicles rolled out of the mansion gates, heading toward Romano territory. Emily watched until the last car disappeared into the distance. She quietly whispered, "Please come back." Hidden behind a nearby pillar, Isabella heard every word. A slow smile appeared on her face. She pulled out her phone and sent a single message to Victor Romano. "Adrian has left the mansion. Emily is alone." Less than 30 seconds later, Victor read the message. He laughed. "I knew he'd take the bait." He looked toward 6 masked men waiting beside a black van. "Go. Bring her to me. And this time, don't fail." Miles away, Emily stood alone on the mansion balcony, watching the dark road where Adrian had disappeared. She never noticed the black van slowly approaching the rear service gate of the estate. Inside the van, one masked man quietly loaded a tranquilizer gun. Another checked his rope. The driver smiled. "Let's bring the future Mrs. De Luca home." To the wrong family. The cold night settled over the De Luca estate, but the silence did not last long. Emily remained on the balcony long after Adrian's convoy disappeared into the darkness. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling growing inside her chest. Something felt wrong. Adrian had only been gone for a few minutes, yet the mansion suddenly seemed much larger and much quieter than before. She took one last look at the empty road and whispered a small prayer for his safety before walking back inside. She had no idea that, at that very moment, danger was already moving through the estate. Near the rear service gate, a maintenance truck slowly stopped in front of two security guards. The driver wore a company uniform and calmly handed over a work order, explaining that there had been an emergency electrical failure reported from inside the estate. The guards looked at the paperwork for only a few seconds before allowing the truck to enter. The moment the vehicle disappeared behind the storage building, 6 masked men silently climbed out from the back. Within seconds, they attacked the guards from behind, knocking them unconscious without firing a single shot. One hacker connected a small device to the estate security system, causing several cameras to freeze on the same image. To anyone watching the monitors, everything still looked normal. Inside the mansion, Emily thanked one of the maids for bringing her tea and walked toward the library. Reading had become the only thing that helped her escape the fear surrounding her life. She had just opened a book when the lights suddenly flickered once, then twice, before the entire room fell into darkness. Emergency lights immediately switched on, filling the hallways with a dim red glow. Emily frowned. The mansion had backup generators. Power failures almost never happened there. She stepped into the hallway just as Marco's voice echoed through the security radios. "Everyone stay alert. Check every entrance." Emily's heart began beating faster. Something was happening. Before she could return to her room, she heard soft footsteps behind her. She quickly turned around, but the hallway was empty. She convinced herself it was only her imagination and continued walking. Then a hand suddenly covered her mouth from behind. Another arm wrapped tightly around her waist. Emily tried to scream, but the sound never escaped. One of the masked men pressed a cloth over her nose. She struggled with all her strength, kicking and fighting desperately, but within seconds her vision became blurry. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was the De Luca family crest hanging on the hallway wall. Hundreds of miles away, Adrian's convoy was racing toward one of Victor Romano's abandoned warehouses. Marco's phone suddenly rang inside the lead vehicle. He answered immediately, but the color drained from his face after only a few seconds. "Boss." Adrian looked at him. "What is it?" Marco swallowed. "Emily. They've taken her." The entire vehicle became silent. Adrian slowly closed his eyes. No anger. No shouting. Only silence. That silence frightened every man inside the convoy far more than any scream ever could. A few moments later, Adrian quietly spoke. "Turn the cars around." Marco nodded immediately. "What about Romano's warehouse?" Adrian looked through the windshield into the dark highway. "I don't chase traps anymore. They've already brought the war to my home." His voice became colder than ice. "Now I bring it to theirs." Back inside Romano territory, Emily slowly opened her eyes. Her hands were tied to a wooden chair inside a large abandoned factory. The room smelled of oil and smoke. Bright lights pointed directly at her face, making it difficult to see anything around her. As her vision cleared, she noticed Victor Romano standing a few feet away with a glass of wine in his hand. He smiled. "I was beginning to think Adrian would never leave you alone." Emily stared at him with fear but refused to lower her eyes. Victor walked closer. "You've caused me a lot of problems." "I never wanted any of this," Emily replied quietly. Victor laughed. "Exactly. That's why you're so useful." He leaned closer. "Adrian De Luca has never cared about anyone since Sophia died. But then you appeared." Emily looked confused. "You knew Sophia?" Victor's smile slowly disappeared. "I didn't know her. I ordered her death." Emily's eyes widened in horror. Victor calmly took another sip of his drink. "She wasn't the target. Adrian was. But losing the woman he loved hurt him far more than any bullet ever could." Emily felt sick. Now she understood why Adrian had buried every emotion inside himself. Victor stepped back and looked at one of his men. "Get the cameras ready." Emily frowned. "Cameras?" Victor smiled. "Oh yes. I want Adrian to watch this live." At that exact moment, dozens of black SUVs surrounded the abandoned factory from every direction. The ground shook beneath the speeding vehicles. Helicopters appeared overhead, their powerful lights cutting through the darkness. More than 100 armed De Luca soldiers took their positions around the building. Inside the lead vehicle, Adrian calmly stepped out. His black suit moved gently in the cold wind. His face showed no emotion. Marco looked at him. "Boss, our snipers are ready." Adrian nodded once. "No negotiations. No mercy." Marco understood immediately. The order spread across every radio. Then, the factory lights suddenly went out. The sound of shattered windows echoed from every direction. Smoke filled the building. Victor grabbed his pistol. "They're here." Before anyone could react, Adrian's elite guards burst through every entrance at once. The firefight lasted only minutes. Gunshots echoed through the factory as Romano's men fell one after another. Emily ducked behind the chair as bullets flew past. One masked gunman aimed directly at her. Before he could pull the trigger, a single shot echoed. The attacker collapsed. Emily looked up. Adrian stood only a few feet away. His pistol was still raised. Their eyes met. For a brief second, the battle around them disappeared. Adrian quickly untied her hands. "Are you hurt?" Emily shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "I knew you'd come." Adrian gently held her shoulders. "I promised." Suddenly, Victor appeared behind them, aiming his gun straight at Adrian's back. Emily saw him first. "Adrian!" Without thinking, she pushed Adrian aside. The gun fired. The bullet struck Emily in the shoulder. She cried out in pain as she fell into Adrian's arms. Time seemed to stop. Adrian looked down at the blood spreading across her dress. His hands began to shake. For the first time in many years, the most feared Mafia boss looked afraid. Victor laughed. "Now you know how it feels." Adrian slowly stood. His eyes were empty. Not with sadness. With judgment. Victor fired again. Adrian moved faster. One shot. Victor's gun fell. A second shot. Victor dropped to his knees. The factory became completely silent. Victor looked up. "You've won." Adrian lowered his pistol. "No. You lost. The moment you touched her." Police sirens echoed in the distance. Romano's remaining men surrendered. Paramedics rushed inside and carefully placed Emily onto a stretcher. She reached for Adrian's hand. He held it tightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Adrian gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face. "You have nothing to be sorry for." Emily smiled weakly. "So, our marriage, it was only supposed to be fake." Adrian looked into her eyes. Then, for the first time without fear, without hesitation, and without hiding his heart, he quietly smiled. "It stopped being fake. The moment I realized I couldn't imagine losing you." A single tear rolled down Emily's cheek. She squeezed his hand. "I love you." Adrian leaned closer. "So do I." Outside, the first light of dawn appeared over the city. The war was finally over. The lies were gone. The fear had ended. And what had begun as one desperate request in the rain, "Will you pretend to be my husband?" had become the promise of a lifetime.